we can bring in the jury.
Please stand for the jury.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. The defense may call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense called Brewer.
Sir, please come forward to be sworn, right up here.
Right here. Right here. Can you spell your first and last name, please?
Yes, D-A-R-R-Y-L. Last name Brewer, B-R-E-W-E-R.
All right. Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Sir, please walk right around here and have a seat. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Daryl Brewer.
And Daryl, where do you live?
I live in Carmel, California.
And are you single, married, divorced?
I am divorced.
Okay. And Mr. Brewer, how old are you?
I'm 52.
And do you have any children?
Yes, I have one son,
Okay, and how old is your son?
14.
Okay. Do you know this lady here in the blue shirt?
Yes.
How do you know her?
I know Jodi because we were in love.
Step back a little bit. Why don't we talk about when you met her? Do you recall that?
Yes, I met Jodi in the fall of 2001.
Okay. Could you describe for all of us the circumstances of how you met Jodi?
Yes, I was employed as food and beverage director at Ventana Inn and Spa in Big Sur, and Jodi came as an applicant applying for a job as a server.
And how did she present herself during her interview with you?
Outstanding. She was on time, she interviewed well, she was dressed appropriately.
And did you hire Miss Arias at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay. And you said at that point in time you were a food and beverage manager, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And how long had you worked at Ventana prior to that time?
Just about a year.
Okay. Why don't you do us a favor and back up a little bit and describe Ventana, what it is, you know, and what you did there?
Yes, Ventana is a 63-room boutique hotel on the Big Sur coast with wedding and banquet facilities and restaurants. And I was hired as the food and beverage manager to run the food and beverage operation.
And the food and beverage operation, is that just a restaurant, or is it more extensive than that?
It consists of managing the restaurant, the room service, the banquets, cafe, associated duties with food and beverage being offered on the property.
Okay. And what position specifically, because I don't think we were clear, what position was she applying and ultimately hired for?
The position of server.
Okay. And is there more than one restaurant in your, in the resort, or is it just the one?
There's one main restaurant, and there's also breakfast service at the inn itself.
Okay.
So,
And so we're clear, was this at the main restaurant or the?
this is the main restaurant.
Okay. And you described it as high-end, correct?
Yes, it's rather, it's voted a 4-star resort by a mobile travel guide for many, many years.
Okay. So in order for somebody to get hired, you would be particularly concerned about how they would present themselves or how they would act. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Now, at the point in time you hired Ms. Arias, I would take it to understand that you would be a supervisor to her. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes.
And to further clarify for everyone, were you her direct supervisor? Were there restaurant managers? How did that work?
Jodi was under my direct supervision. There were other managers involved.
Okay. During your time period, and how, after you hired Jodi, how long did you remain as the food and beverage manager?
Approximately a year.
Okay. So you were her supervisor for about a year?
Yes.
Okay. And did the resort, Ventana, did they have any policies in terms of reviewing a person's work, annual evaluations, semi-annual evaluations, anything of that nature?
Yes, they
Okay.
did. It started off with a 90-day probation with an evaluation at 90 days. And at that point, the employee was either kept or let go.
Okay.
And then from then on, it was annual evaluations.
Okay. Tell us, did Jodi survive, I guess if would be the right term, that 90-day evaluation period?
Yes,
Okay. She was doing well as an employee?
she was excelling, yes.
Okay. And in assessing that, it sounds like you worked with her on a daily or near daily basis. Is that accurate on my part?
That is accurate, almost daily.
Almost daily. Okay. And you were her supervisor again for about a year in total, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in that time, was there any disciplinary problems, any behavioral problems, anything of that nature where she was inappropriate with customers or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Now, at this point in time, were you dating Miss Arias?
No.
Okay. When did you talked about after about a year, you weren't her supervisor anymore. So describe for us what happened within your job or her job that changed your status as a supervisor.
We had changes in our management and other positions that affect my job, and I made the decision to step out of my management job and did so.
Okay. And just backing up a bit, your son, how old was your son when you worked at Ventana? When
I
you
started
began, I
in-
should say.
A year and a half when I started,
Okay. And were you divorced at this time?
I was.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there was a shift in the management structure at Ventana. You were no longer Jodi's boss after that shift. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you have a new job title? Could you just kind of describe that for us?
Yes, I was working as a server in banquets and helping with the weddings.
Okay. So you were then you went from a supervisor of Jodi's to a coworker? Is that?
Yes,
Okay. And up until that point in time, there had been no romantic relationship at all?
correct.
Okay. Did that romantic relationship then evolve when you were coworkers?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Tell us about that.
We began to spend a little more time together. Our relationship was not supervisor-employee anymore, and became infatuated and fell in love.
Okay. Well, you said a lot there, so let's kind of break that down a little bit. Were you living at the resort or just working there?
I was living in the staff housing at the resort,
Okay.
yes.
And to your recollection, was Miss Arias also living in that staff housing?
She was also living in staff housing.
Okay. So you begin to spend your off hours together, and you're working together, and you're falling in love.
Correct.
Okay. Tell us about who Jodi was at that point in time.
Jodi was a very responsible, caring, loving person.
And she knew of your son?
She did know of my son, yes.
Okay. And how long a period of time did you date Miss Arias altogether?
Just about 4 years.
Okay. And it began when you moved yourself down to, when you were moved down to a server position, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you two lived in the employee housing. And how long did you remain there?
I was in staff housing until sometime in 2003 when I moved to Monterey.
Okay. And when you moved to Monterey, how far is the Ventana Resort from Monterey?
It's about 32 miles.
Okay. Is this resort, Ventana, is this kind of seasonal work, or has a peak season, or is it one of these type resorts, or is it an all year round?
It is open year-round and does peak in the summer season.
Okay. Could you explain to us then why you decided to move to Monterey?
I wanted to be out of the staff housing situation. It's not the best housing. And,
Okay. All right. And did Jodi move with you, or how did that? Tell us about that.
Jodi did not move with me. She lived in the staff housing at Ventana, separate from me, separate
Okay.
houses. I moved back to town, to Monterey, and Jodi remained in staff housing.
Okay. Did the relationship continue after you moved?
It did.
Okay. And how often would you see each other?
I would have to say 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay. And was there a point in time, whether it was before or after you moved to Monterey, that you were boyfriend and girlfriend, or an exclusive relationship? How would you, or if you had a definition of that type?
Our relationship, I would say, was boyfriend and girlfriend, and I would say that it was exclusive.
Okay. And when do you think that, was that right away, or was that after you moved? When did that kind of come about?
Before I moved to town and continued on after.
Okay. Was there any point in time when you and Miss Arias came to live together?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about how that situation arose and where you were in your relationship when that decision was made.
The decision was made to live together when we purchased a house together.
Okay. And when was that?
That was in 2005.
Okay. And was that in Monterey, or was that somewhere else?
That was in Palm Desert, California.
And why was the two of you made a decision to purchase a home together?
We did.
Okay. And how did that work? Were you both on the mortgage?
We were,
Okay. And so it's a pretty stable relationship at that point in time?
very much so.
Okay. And the home you purchased, you said Palm Desert, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why Palm Desert as opposed to Monterey? Was there any particular reason?
The mother of my son had plans to remarry and move to that area. And so I chose to be in that area because of my son.
Okay. And if I'm following right, at the time you purchased the home, your son would have been about 4 or 5?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the custodial situation between you and your ex-wife?
We shared custody.
Okay. So in terms of this home you were purchasing with Ms. Arias, it was going to include, your son was going to live there as well, at least part of the time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How did you come to the point where you felt like it was okay for that situation to introduce your son to Jodi? Tell us about that a little bit, maybe, and explain why you felt it was okay to introduce him and then ultimately have the three of you live together.
After my divorce, after my separation, I should say, I was not divorced in 2000. It was a little while after that, the paperwork was official, but I was separated and moved away, and we were, for all intents and purposes, divorced. And I was very wary about bringing anyone around my son. I was in a position where I shared custody with his mother, and that meant that I was a part-time with my son, and that time was very valuable to me, and so I made a choice to not introduce other people. I wasn't dating before Jodi.
Okay.
And so Jodi met my son slowly and gradually. By the time we moved in together, Jodi lived with us, and I lived with Jodi, and my son lived with us part-time.
Okay. And how was Jodi's relationship with your son?
It was outstanding.
Were they close?
They were close.
Did they spend time together on their own?
They did. There were a few occasions where they were together on their own.
Okay. And did you also go out, the three of you, doing events together, going to places together?
We did.
Okay. I know you weren't married to Jodi, but was she serving as kind of a stepmother role to your son at that point in time?
I would not describe it as a stepmother role at all.
Okay.
A friendly role, a friend to Jack is how I would describe it.
Okay. This home you purchased in Palm Desert, when was this home purchased?
This was in June of 2005.
Okay. And I mentioned the both of you being on the mortgage. You weren't married, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were there plans for that? What was the status of the relationship when the two of you bought a home together?
When the two of us bought a home together, we were boyfriend, girlfriend, homeowners together. Plans for marriage, I could not say that I had planned to get married or not. I was unsure. Okay.
You'd been together, excuse me, with Miss Arias for a few years at the point in time that you purchased a home, right?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the subject of marriage, was that ever discussed between you and Jodi?
It was occasionally. I can't tell you how often, not very often. She knew that I was coming out of a divorce, and I was not ready to be married again.
Okay. And that was was that something that was discussed early on in the relationship, or was that something that came up later?
I would have to say somewhat later.
Okay. And that was about you, not Jodi, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you must have been very happy in the relationship at the point in time when you were buying this house. Is that fair to say?
I was indeed.
Okay. In terms of this contract, this mortgage, Was there a particular plan in terms of, are you going to live there the rest of your lives? You're going to live there for a few years? Was that discussed?
The plan was somewhat uncertain, revolving around my son. We had hoped to stay in the house for a minimum of at least 2 years. We weren't in the process of flipping houses. We wanted to establish the home and possibly resell it.
Okay. So was this part business venture, part home, shall we say? I mean, a home to live in, but also a business venture?
Not a formal business venture, a personal business venture. I mean, it was a home, but we also looked at it as an investment, hope to gain from it at some point.
Okay. And do you recall the amount of the mortgage on the home? The
Yeah.
monthly payment, monthly mortgage?
The monthly payments were somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,700, $1,800.
Okay. And was that something that was, that amount, I take it you split that down the middle?
We did, we shared expenses.
Okay. And was that something that was difficult for you both to pay your halves of the mortgage? Was that a strain or?
No, we were able to accomplish it.
Okay. And where were you working at the time that you purchased the house? Were you still at Ventana?
No, I had left Ventana and left my other employment in Monterey. At the time of the home purchase, I was looking for work in Palm Desert.
Okay. And where was Jodi working, to your recollection?
Jodi was working at the California Pizza Kitchen
Okay.
in Monterey, and then also in Palm Desert when we moved.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, when you purchased the home, did she have 2 jobs, or was this just a matter of moving? You mentioned a couple jobs, so I was a little confused.
I'm sorry. When we moved to Palm Desert, she started working at the California Pizza Kitchen and then eventually got a second job
Okay. And do you recall where that second job was?
at a restaurant called Quisto.
Okay. So she was working 2 jobs, and you were looking for work, correct?
Correct.
At this point in time? And Jack was living with you on a part-time basis, right?
Correct.
Okay. Was there a point in time where Jodi was paying the home mortgage, or how did that work with you not working?
I got a job and went to work within 2.5 months.
Okay.
And was able to support my share until then.
Okay. And the relationship was still happy at this point in time?
Very much so.
Okay. And refresh me again, when did you sign off on the mortgage of this home?
Late May, early June 2005.
Okay, 2005. So how long did the 2 of you live in this home?
We lived in that home until December of 2006.
Okay. And how many rooms were in the home?
3 bedrooms.
Okay, 3 bedrooms. Did you and Miss Arias share a bedroom, or did you have separate bedrooms?
We had separate bedrooms and shared a bedroom quite often.
Okay. Was there a reason for the separate, was that just for appearances for Jack, or?
It wasn't for appearances, it was a matter of the amount of things we had.
Okay.
Beds, dressers, etc.
Okay. I want to fast forward a little bit to your life in 2006, in the summer of 2006. What was going on in the summer of 2006? Were you still living with Jodi?
I was.
Okay. At this point in time, it seems to me like you would have been in the relationship 3.5 years. Is that about
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. Is that a yes? The court reporter
Yes.
needs to hear yes or no. Thank you. At this point in time, was there, or had there been more discussion about marriage?
No.
Okay. You were still in love with Jodi?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, she was still in love with you?
Yes.
Okay. During this point in time, during the point in time of your relationship up to the summer of 2006, did you ever see Jodi act jealous towards women that you came in contact with?
No.
When you first met her at Ventana, or first began dating her, I should say, when you were working at Ventana, I would suspect there was a lot of females at the workplace there as well.
Certainly.
Okay. Majority, would you say, of the workforce?
Was the majority of the workforce female?
Yes.
I couldn't say.
Okay. But during that time period, did Jodi ever act jealous at all?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Did you ever notice her being violent or having a violent temper?
Never.
Do you remember a point in time when Jodi became involved in prepaid legal?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember about when that was?
I want to say early 2006, maybe March, April.
Okay. And tell us about what you knew about her involvement in prepaid legal. How did it begin, to your knowledge?
I don't recall how Jodi learned about it,
Okay.
but she did share it with me, and it was exciting.
Okay. Do you remember her going to Las Vegas to a convention?
I
For
do.
prepaid legal. Okay. At this point in time, or I should say prior to her going to this convention, I'm trying to get a good sense here. Was she still working the two jobs?
Prior to going to convention. She was still working two jobs, as far as I knew, up until some point in the fall of 2006.
Okay. And what happened, you mentioned the fall of 2006. What happened in the fall of 2006?
In the fall of 2006, the mother of my son decided to move back to Monterey and took my son as well, and he started school in Pacific Grove in the fall of 2006.
Okay. To kind of help us understand everything, you mentioned Palm Desert and Monterey, and it seems like we've gone back and forth a couple times. How far away is Monterey from Palm Desert?
9 to 10 hour drive,
Okay,
several hundred miles.
okay. So you mentioned that your ex-wife is going to move 9 hours away to Monterey, and were you going to follow Jack, or can you kind of explain that to us, what was going on with you?
Yes, I was going to follow Jack, and I began a strategy of how to get back to Monterey.
Okay. And talk to us a little bit about that strategy, if you will.
The strategy was that I was trying to find work, and as soon as I found work, I was going to move back to Monterey and continue to support the household and pay the mortgage in Palm Desert.
Okay. So was the plan for Jodi to move with you back to Monterey, or what about the dynamics of your relationship with Ms. Arias?
We had not planned per se for her to move back. My hope was that she would remain in the home until we could come to a resolution, until we could sell the house.
Okay. In terms of the relationship at this point in time, was it, were you breaking up? Was it going to be a long-distance relationship? What were the discussions about your relationship with Ms. Arias?
Let's see, the relationship was slowly deteriorating over the summer of 2006. By the fall, Jodi had, we were still together in the home, but it was becoming clear that I was moving back to Monterey and that we would not be living together.
Okay. So you're saying at this point in time, things were kind of coming to a natural end? Is that what you're telling us?
I don't know how natural it was. I saw a lot of changes in Jodi. She became a bit of a different person than I had known previously.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. You said she became a different person than you had known previously. Can you explain to us what you meant by that, or what you mean by that?
What I mean is that as she got more involved with prepaid legal, she became less responsible to the household bills. I think that she had thoughts of succeeding in prepaid legal and being able to support herself through those efforts, and it didn't quite seem to be the case.
Okay. Let's break that down a little bit. You said a lot. Was she still working the 2 jobs at the Pizza Kitchen and Croissant, I think is how I say it? Was she still working those 2 jobs, or did prepaid legal become the primary focus?
I believe that prepaid legal became her primary focus, and she did continue to work the 2 jobs.
She did or did not?
She did until some point, as far as I know, in the summer of 2006.
Okay. And in the fall of 2006 as well, at this point in time, you're living in Monterey?
I'm living in the desert in the fall of 2006 and trying to get back to Monterey.
Okay, trying to get back to Monterey. You're not there yet. And this $1,800 a month mortgage, was that right? Was it still that at that point in time?
It was the same. It might have been slightly more than that, but it was the same the whole time. Mhm.
Okay. Was she paying her half of the mortgage and still fulfilling her end of the obligation?
In the fall of 2006, she had continued to pay the mortgage. She was not paying other household bills, and it looked like she was becoming, maybe getting into debt or into financial trouble. She continued to pay the mortgage into the fall of 2006, and then was unable to do so after that.
Okay. And that was a change in Jodi as well, because prior to that, she had paid all the bills, worked the jobs, and kept up on her end of the bargain, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you said it appeared to you that she was putting all her faith, if you will, into prepaid legal.
Yes.
And describe what you mean by that. I mean, was she just thinking she was going to be immediately prosperous? How to kind of describe for us the things?
I think she thought she was going to be prosperous, maybe not immediately, but very shortly. And for me, it seemed to me like she was not as rational and not as logical as she was prior. That there was almost a magical thinking that if we only believed and worked hard enough, that the prepaid legal was going to come through.
Okay. As far as her spirituality, could you describe for us your understanding of her spirituality, say, for example, not maybe when you met her as an employer, but as you began dating, did you begin to learn about that?
Yes, I learned that Jodi was spiritual and that she had a belief in God, and that I would have to classify it as just non-denominational Christian from what I knew. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And moving back to that time period in 2006, in the fall of 2006, did that change?
That did change, actually. Jodi, we had discussed spirituality in the past. We were not actively religious. Jodi did become more actively religious in the fall of 2006.
Okay. And to your knowledge, what church or denomination did she become involved with?
The Church of Mormon.
Okay. And did you, how did you become aware of this? I mean, did she tell you this? Were there visitors to the home? How did that work?
She did mention it, and she mentioned that she was studying it. There were visitors to the home. There were prayer sessions in our home, and I knew that she was actively getting more involved and taking her spirituality more seriously.
Okay. Did that cause any more behavioral changes in Jodi that you saw?
It did indeed. At that time, we had stopped being intimate, and Jodi had told me that she was saving herself for a husband.
And so then the sleeping arrangements were the separate bedrooms, I would take it, at that point in time, right?
Indeed, they were.
Okay. And up to that point in time, you said you had an intimate relationship with Miss Arias. When did that intimate relationship begin?
That began sometime in 2002, late in 2002, after I had left my position at Ventana.
Okay. And it ended in fall of 2006 when she became involved in prepaid legal and the Mormon Church, is that correct?
In the fall, she had been involved in prepaid legal months before, but that did become the case in the fall.
Okay.
Yes.
A moment, Your Honor. These visitors to the home that you mentioned, did they start showing up before or after this convention?
Before.
At that time in fall of 2006, were you aware of her becoming involved in a relationship with Travis Alexander?
No.
How did your relationship ultimately end? We were at a point where we were in separate bedrooms and she was saving herself for marriage and you were looking to move to Monterey. How did the relationship end?
At that point, I found employment in Monterey, and I moved late in December, and we parted at that point. And I didn't feel that the relationship had ended, but it definitely had changed.
Okay, well, let me ask you, say parted. Does that mean you broke up, per se? Was there a breakup conversation?
There wasn't a formal breakup conversation as much as I think we both saw our paths going the other way. I was hoping that Jodi would be back with me after resolving the house issue, but it was an unsure time. It was left open.
Okay. Was she clinging on to you, trying to go to Monterey with you, anything of that nature?
At that time, no.
And so you eventually moved back to Monterey, and what became of the house?
The house eventually foreclosed in the following year. I was unable to support it past February of 2007.
Okay. After you moved to Monterey and the house went into foreclosure, what was your relationship with Jodi like during that time period, if there was any relationship?
I would have to say at that time the relationship was nothing but an occasional phone call. We were not romantically involved, obviously, and I had learned that she had left the house and moved to the Arizona area.
And so you remained friends on good terms?
We did.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Sir, you indicated that you moved from the Palm Desert home back to California in December of 2006, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you moved back, she didn't go with you, right?
Correct.
And even though time passed, you and she continue to be good friends, right?
We talked occasionally.
You were friends then, right?
Yes.
And she knew your phone number and you knew hers, right?
Yes.
And that continued on, for example, into 2007, right? You continued to have this relationship where you were sort of friends where you would call occasionally, right?
Correct.
And the same thing can be said for 2008, correct? You continued to be this sort of sporadic friend, right?
I had yes, sporadic contact, yes.
And in fact, back in 2008, she knew your number and you knew her number, right?
Correct.
And if she needed something, she would call you, right?
Objection, cause for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, sir, isn't it true that in May of 2008, you received a telephone call from the defendant, Jodi Arias?
I could have, yes.
Well, isn't it true that during that telephone call, she was asking you for a favor? Do you remember that?
No.
Do you remember that during that favor, she was asking you for gas cans in May of 2008 at the very end so that she could make a trip to Mesa, Arizona? You remember that?
Yes.
And she made more than one call asking you for these gas cans to make a trip to Arizona, didn't she?
Yes.
In fact, in the first part of June of 2008, she called you again asking about these gas cans to go to Mesa, right?
Yes.
And during the first time that she brought up this issue in the end of May of 2008, you asked her, why do you need these gas cans? Do you remember asking her that?
I do.
And she got really testy with you, didn't she?
Not necessarily testy. She said she needed them. She was taking a long trip.
Well, do you remember that you had a conversation with a representative from the defendant at some point? Do you remember that? They came out to visit you?
Yes.
And during that time, didn't you tell them that you asked her why she needed the gas cans, and she got testy?
Approach. You may continue.
She got testy, right?
I wouldn't say testy.
She wouldn't answer you, though, why she wanted those gas cans, right?
She did answer me.
She answered it during the second conversation that you had in the first part of June. She told you why she wanted those gas cans, right?
I don't recall if it was the first or the second conversation. She said she was taking a trip and wanted to borrow the gas cans.
Right, and she told you she was going to Mesa, right?
She said she was going on a long trip. Did not say particularly Mesa, no.
Well, sir, let's go ahead and mark this as an exhibit and see if this refreshes your recollection, okay? Sir, this is exhibit number 411. I first would like you to go to the page that at the lower right-hand corner says 357 and read the highlighted portion. And once you're done reading it, please let me know.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and turn, if I have that back, I'll turn the page for you and then read this portion here that's also highlighted. You do admit that you had a conversation with somebody representing the defendant, right?
I did have a conversation, yes, sir.
And does this refresh your recollection as to the fact that she got testy with you or not?
No.
And with regard to going to Mesa, Arizona, does that refresh your recollection or not?
No.
But she said she was going to go on a trip, though, right?
She did.
And that's why she wanted the gas cans, right?
Yes.
And ostensibly, the reason that she wanted these gas cans is because she was going to get lost, right?
I don't know that she had any plans to get lost, no.
That's what she told you, that that was part of the reason why she needed the gas cans, right?
No.
Sir, she did come by your house on June 3rd of 2008, right before her trip, right?
Yes.
She came by and she had breakfast with you, right?
Yeah, we had some food, yes.
And your son was there, right?
Yes.
And that was around 7 o'clock in the morning, wasn't it?
Approximately, yes.
And while she was there, you allowed her to use your email or your computer, right?
Yes.
And she checked her email, right?
Yes.
And an individual by Matthew McCartney showed up also, right?
No.
You don't remember seeing him that morning?
No.
But at some point, she took off, right?
Yes.
When she came to see you, did you see any of her luggage or anything like that?
No.
And when she took off, she called you back again between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning, didn't she?
I don't recall.
What was your telephone number back then, sir? With the area code, please.
What was my telephone number?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask this, we done off the record, so his phone number is not, at least he can write it down. Don't need to write it down.
Council approach.
Let me show you another exhibit. This is exhibit number 412, sir. Go ahead and write the cell number that you had back then on June 2nd and 3rd of 2008. And it's the same number you have now, correct?
Correct.
I move for the admission of exhibit 412.
No objection, just ask you to be under seal.
All right, 412 will be sealed and admitted.
After she took off that morning, she returned, didn't she? To give you something?
I do not recall her returning, no.
Do you remember her giving you a remote control that she had taken off, that she had? Do you remember her returning and giving that back to you about 10 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, I do recall that.
And she also told you that she was going to head south, right?
Yes.
You remember the color of the car that she had?
No.
She was heading south, and one of the people that she wanted to visit was your sister, right? At least that's what she told you,
That's what
right?
I heard.
What's your sister's name, sir?
My sister's name is Laura Mahoney.
And where were you living back in June of 2008?
June of 2008, I was living in Pacific Grove.
Pacific Grove, is that near Monterey?
Yes.
How far is it, if you know, in terms of miles, from Monterey to the Los Angeles area?
A little over 300.
And driving time, how much time would it be if you made the trip?
6 to 8 hours.
And she was telling you that that's where she was going to go, though, right?
Yes,
And before she left, though, you gave her 2 gas cans, didn't you?
I did.
Each were 5-gallon gas cans, right?
Correct.
For a total of 10 gallons that would be available to be put in these cans, right?
The cans would have held 10 gallons, yes.
And what color were the cans?
They were red.
And when you gave her these cans, did you ask her what she was going to use them for or not?
At the time, no.
Okay. Let me show you some exhibits. First of all, let's take a look at exhibit number 237.001. Can you see that, sir?
Yes.
We see that it says that there's an invoice, and it talks about June 3rd of 2008. That's the same day that she came to your house, right?
Correct.
And it shows us that the time on this one, it's 8:42 p.m. So if she had left your house at around 10, 11 o'clock, that would have given her ample time to get down to Pasadena, correct?
That would have given her ample time, yes.
And it says it's pump number 2, and it does give gallons, right?
It does.
It's 8.301 gallons, and then it gives the price, and then there's a payment there, right? Is that yes, sir? You can't
yes,
take down the...
yes.
I apologize. And the time, I want you to note it specifically. It's 8:42 p.m., right?
Correct.
Are you familiar with military time, sir? Or is that something that you're not familiar with?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, then let's take a look at Exhibit 237.012. You see the time on that one there? It's 20:46:50, which is 8:46, right? You want me to bring it in a little bit
Yes.
more? And if you take a look at this other one, the previous exhibit, which is exhibit number 237.01, this is approximately 4 minutes later, right?
It appears to be, yes.
And this is also a sale for gas. And if you take a look at it, same gas station, right? Same, it appears to be the same, or it's same gas station in the same, that it's the ARCO AM/PM, right? Or ARCO,
Yeah, one says AM, PM, the other doesn't.
right? But one does say ARCO, the other one also says ARCO on there, right? And both of them are in Pasadena, California, right?
Correct.
However, the one that's a little bit later, about how much gas, can you see how much gas is purchased there?
It looks like 9.594 gallons.
That's approximately close to 10 gallons, right?
That's close to 10 gallons, yes.
And the address on that one is 3706 East Foothill Boulevard, right?
Yes.
Then if we look at this other one, 237.013, this other exhibit, we'll go with the time first. It's 8:53 p.m., right? See that upper left?
I see that, yes.
And that's approximately 7 minutes after the previous purchase, which is exhibit number 237.012, correct?
Correct.
And this one is for, can you see that it's for more gas? Can you see that?
Yes, it looks like 2.77 something.
Right. And if we add, let's just say 2.7 and round it off to 10, we're talking about 12.5 gallons, right?
Yes, without doing
Roughly,
the math,
right?
yes.
Let's take a look at exhibit number 237.018. This one's from the Flying J Travel Plaza. You see that in a place called Winnemucca, Nevada, and that's June 6th of 2008. You see who the purchaser is there, right? Jodi Arias, correct?
Correct.
MasterCard. It talks about a pump, right? See that,
Yes.
number 11? Talks about the quantity, 12.175, one would assume gallons, right?
Yes.
Let's just do a little bit of basic math. Let's say the car she was driving had a capacity of 12 gallons. Overruled. And if you multiply that by 30 miles per gallon, let's just say that it's highway driving, that would be 360 miles, right?
I imagine if your math is correct,
If
yes.
the math is correct, that's what it would be. And we have roughly, on the other two exhibits that we talked about, we have roughly the same amount, 12 and a half gallons. Did you notice that? Do you remember that? That it was.
Yes.
And so if we're talking about that same 30 miles to the gallon, 12 and a half, we're talking about roughly another 360 miles, right?
Makes sense?
So if a person fills up, for example, in Pasadena, given the mathematics that we're doing, and puts 12 gallons in this car, and we're talking 30 miles, and I understand that these are just rough figures, you're talking 360 plus the other 12 and a half gallons, another 360, for a total of about 720 miles, right?
Correct.
So if a person, for example, have you ever been from the Los Angeles area to Mesa, Arizona, sir?
No, I never have.
You know where it is, though, right?
Somewhere in this area, from what I understand, it's my first visit to Arizona.
You know where Phoenix is, though, right?
It's where we are now, correct?
Right. And have you been here before or not?
No.
Later, the defendant came back to California and at some point called you, right?
Later as to when?
After, let's say, we were talking here about June 3rd, and that's when she came over to your house, right?
Correct.
And just for the sake of getting our dates right, the date on that gas receipt is June 3rd, right?
Yes.
The date on Exhibit 162 is what? And if you need to see it up there, I will bring it up to you, or I'll put this up on the Elmo so that we all can see it.
It looks to be June 4th.
Correct. One day after she was at your house in the morning, about 7 o'clock, right?
Correct.
The gas cans, sir, did she ever return them to you?
No.
Did you ever ask her about returning those gas cans to you?
Don't recall if I ever had a chance to ask her, no.
Pardon?
No, I don't recall.
Sir, let's try to get a little bit of the chronology that involving your relationship with her. You did indicate that you met with her, or that you met her at the Ventana Inn and Spa, right?
Correct.
Did you meet her in the midsummer of 2002, or did you meet her in 2001 as you told us today? Which of the two is it?
I recall meeting her in the fall of 2001.
All right. You did start to date, though, in January of 2003, though, right?
Correct.
And you sort of made it official, started really seeing each other was at the San Francisco 49ers game, right?
Yes,
And that was, you spent the night together, right?
we did.
Was that the first time you and she had ever had sex?
No.
And you remember the first time you and she had sex, though, right?
I do remember, yes.
And she was very aggressive, wasn't she?
We were both aggressive.
Well, do you remember when the person came to talk to you, one of the things that you told them was that she was pretty aggressive on the first time that you had sex? Do you remember saying anything about that?
I do not recall saying that, no.
Well, let me show you that, okay? Go back to exhibit number 411. Take a look right here, top of page 7 right there. Take a look at that. Read that.
Okay.
Says that, right?
That's what that says, yes.
And you don't remember if you told that to anybody else?
No, I don't recall that.
Would it be that you did say that to somebody else or not?
I don't recall.
And not only was she aggressive, she was enthusiastic about it, wasn't she? The sex, I mean.
We were both enthusiastic, yes.
And she was comfortable with the intimacy, right?
Yes.
And at some point, you and she even enjoyed, I believe on 2 occasions, anal sex, right?
Possibly once.
Possibly once, couldn't have been 2?
I don't recall.
Then, you actually did move to Palm Desert in June of 2005 is what you told us though, right?
Correct.
That's when you bought the house after you moved there about a year later in May of 2006 when you bought the house, right? Is when you bought the house in Palm Desert.
We bought the house in Palm Desert in May, June of 2005.
So you didn't buy it in 2006?
No.
So if this indicates it was 2006, that would be an error then, correct?
That would be an error. Mhm.
So you do buy it in May of 2005. Actually, the price of the home was $360,000, wasn't it?
That sounds right.
And the monthly payment, I think you said before, was $1,700. It was actually $2,800 a month, wasn't it?
It could have been, yes.
And each of you were responsible for half of it, right?
Correct?
So that would mean that her share would have been $1,400, right?
Correct.
And in May of 2006, while you were at the house living there, that's when the defendant obtained the breast implants, correct?
Yes, she did have a, yes.
That was way before anything having to do with prepaid legal, right?
Not as I recall.
So that was at the time that it was in prepaid legal? She was in prepaid legal?
I believe she was already involved with prepaid legal before that, yes.
So in May of 2006, do you remember telling the investigator that the reason you believe that she got the breast implants is because she wanted to fit in the crowd that you were traveling in?
No, I don't recall that.
Because your wife had just recently obtained breast implants. Do you remember telling the investigator?
I do not recall my wife's breast implants, no.
Did your wife obtain or get breast implants?
I do not know.
And the implants were approximately $300 through a surgeon in La Jolla, California, correct?
I have no idea what the expense was.
Again, do you remember telling that to an investigator?
No.
So during May of 2006, is that when things started to be problematic between you and the defendant? Is that when things started to go south, as they say?
That would be the time that I noticed a dramatic change in Jodi's behavior, yes.
May of 2006, right?
April, May, yes, I can't be sure of an exact date.
And just so that we're clear, April or May of 2006, it may sound like not such a brilliant question, but that's before September of 2006, right?
Yes, May comes before September.
It does. And during that time is during the time when young men of the Mormon faith used to come over to your house, during that period starting around May, right?
I don't recall it being May, but yes, there were young men coming to the
And
house.
could it have been June of 2006 that they started to come over?
It could have been.
Right. And it was during that time, in May or June of 2006, that the defendant said to you, no more cursing, right?
I don't know your timeline. It may have been a little later.
It may have been a little later, June, July maybe of 2006?
Possibly.
But it was during the summer of 2006 anyway.
Yes.
And during that time, that's when she indicated to you that no more sex either, right?
I want to say the fall of 2006, yes.
And you were living in the same house, but no more sex because she was saving herself for marriage, right?
Correct.
And you were telling us that this is an individual that you knew really, really well, right?
Correct.
And that's what she was telling you, no more sex, right?
Yes, indeed.
And she was having these individuals of the Mormon faith come in and talk to her, right?
Yes.
And the reason that she was imposing this no sex thing was because she knew that that's what the Mormon faith sort of believed in, right? Overall.
She was taking religion more seriously at that point, yes.
And that's why she was telling you that, right?
I believe that to be the case, yes.
And you had conversations with her about this, though, right? That's how come you know this, right?
Yes.
And during this particular time, there would be young men that would come over and they would sit down and they would read whatever it is that they were reading while you were there, correct?
Yes, I knew it to be a Bible study, yes.
Right, it was a Bible study. How often was this Bible study taking place in the summer of 2006?
I can't recall how many times I saw them.
And it was right on about that time, though, that the defendant stopped paying the bills, her half of the bills, right?
Correct.
And it actually was in August of 2006 that she stopped paying the bills, right?
Sometime in the summer of 2006, she was having trouble with the bills, yes.
And so then you moved back in December of 2006 to California, right?
Correct.
And then it's up until February of 2007 that you are shouldering both your load as well as hers in terms of the payments, right?
Correct.
And the house ultimately goes into foreclosure and you lose it in January of 2008, right?
Correct.
When you were with her, she had an affinity or an interest in photography, right?
Yes.
She was always taking photographs of you, right?
She was always taking photographs, period.
But some of it included you.
Some of it included me, sure.
In fact, she would take pictures of you sleeping at some point, right?
I believe there were a couple shots like that, yes.
She also took nudes of you at some point, right?
There was one incident in the shower where she took a picture, yes, one.
So she took a picture of you while you were in the shower, right?
Correct.
You didn't ask her to take that picture. She took that picture of you, right?
Yes.
And she, additionally, with regard to these photographs, she also took pictures of you shaving, right?
She may have had a shot of me shaving, yeah.
And with regard to the nude that she may have taken of you in the shower, you actually asked her to delete it, right?
No, I did not.
Did it stay in our camera, or was it deleted?
I have no idea.
Sir, after this date of June 4th of 2008, you had an occasion to receive a telephone call from Jodi Arias, right?
Yes.
She was very agitated, right?
Agitated, she was sad. She was upset.
Did you say that she was hysterically upset? Would you describe her as that?
I would say very upset. I could not see if she was hysterical.
She told you during that conversation, though, that her friend had been killed and she did not have an alibi. She told you that, right?
She did not say that, no.
She didn't tell you anything about her friend being killed?
She told me her friend had been killed, yes.
She didn't tell you anything about the alibi?
No.
Did she also tell you that she ran out of gas on her trip?
Yes, she did.
Did she tell you where she ran out of gas?
No.
Did you ask her where she ran out of gas?
Somewhere in the desert.
Did she also tell you that her friend had been stabbed and shot? Do you remember that part of the conversation?
I don't recall.
Sir, you also discussed with her, though, or you advised her, didn't you, about, at some point, about contact with the media, didn't you? After this conversation that we just talked about. sometime after the arrest, you had a conversation with her about giving interviews and contact with the media, didn't you?
I wouldn't classify the conversation as that, no.
Well, she talked to you about giving an interview to somebody from 48 Hours by the name of Jonathan Leach. Do you remember that?
No.
So, do you remember ever having dinner and meeting Jonathan Leach?
Oh, yes, I did.
And with regard to the defendant, isn't it true that you indicated that the defendant wanted all this publicity that was being generated by this case because she wanted to get money?
No.
I don't have anything else.
Redirect.
Mr. Brewer, did your sex life with Jodi Arias involve her wearing little boys' underwear?
No.
Did it involve putting her in schoolgirl outfits and pigtails?
No.
Did it involve bending her over desks?
No.
Did it involve ejaculating on her face?
No.
Did it involve calling her a whore,
No.
a slut,
No.
a three-hole wonder?
No.
Now, you were asked about, apart from your sex life with Miss Arias, you were asked about her coming to see you in June of 2008.
Yes.
June 3rd. She spent some time with you and your son, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And did everything seem fine?
Everything seemed fine and normal that I could see, yes.
Okay. And there was a couple things that were contradictory here regarding where she was going. I want to kind of back up. What was going on with your sister at that point in time in her life in the June of 2006?
My sister had a new baby.
Okay. And you were telling us that Jodi was going to come down to Pasadena to see her sister. Is that correct?
That was my understanding, yes.
Okay. Do you know if they ever met?
I understand that they did not.
Okay. Now, as it relates to the gas cans and where Jodi was going, on different occasions, one occasion you said Mesa, and one occasion you said a long trip. So I just wanted to clarify that with you.
I believe Jodi told me she was going on a long trip. She was going to see friends in Big Sur and Los Angeles and in Arizona and the Grand Canyon, I believe is what was said.
Okay. And so when you heard Mesa, or comments about Mesa, when you were asked about it, that wasn't accurate to your recollection of where she was going, right?
That's correct. She said Arizona. I didn't know of Mesa.
Okay. These notes that have been brought up to you, did you look at these before you testified today?
No, I don't know what those notes are.
Okay. You didn't approve of what was said or verify what was said as being accurate?
No.
You said in these notes that you recall the missionaries coming over in October of 2008, and when Mr. Martinez was asking you some questions, you said that it was in the summer of 2008. So I just wanted to clarify with you what your recollection is in terms of the relationship with Jodi, the celibacy, all those sort of things. Because when we spoke, it seemed like you were talking about it happening towards the latter part of 2008, or 2006, excuse me.
That's what I recall. If they had come over to the house in June, it could have been. I recall the late summer of 2008.
Okay. 2008 or,
I'm sorry, 2006, excuse me.
that's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any questions from the jury for this witness? I see no hands. Thank you. You may step down. Counsel, please approach. And that's all we have for you today. We will see you back here tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Please remember the admonition. If you have not recently reviewed the admonition, please look at it. You will find a copy in your black notebook. Are there any questions? I know today you were given a key card to give you access to the back jury room. Please use it. Please exercise great caution to make sure you know where it is at all times. Are there any questions? Thank you. Have a nice evening. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. At that time, we will come back for cross-examination to complete the evidentiary hearing we began yesterday. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, is Mr. Hughes, please come back and take the stand. You are still under oath, do you understand? Record will show the presence of the defendant and now all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may cross-examine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I want to show you what's in ours. As Defendant's Exhibit 11. May I approach, Your Honor? And tell me if you can verify, is that your cell phone number?
It is, yes.
Okay. And was that the initial text, the text you sent to Mr. Searcy?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I'm not going to ask you to make them public, but I'm going to approach with a piece of paper, and I'd like you to write down your wife's cell phone and your current home phone for me. Could you do that?
Sure.
Do you have a pen?
I do.
And you're done?
Done.
Thank you, sir. And these are both current?
Yes, I don't have a home phone.
Okay. And Your Honor, when marked, I would ask that the exhibit be admitted under seal.
Exhibit 12. Any objection from the state?
No.
All right, Exhibit 12 will be admitted for purposes of this hearing only.
Now, in your testimony yesterday, Mr. Hughes, you told us that you had not had any conversations with Mr. Martinez until the night prior to your testimony. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you did not speak with him until January 27th of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when he asked you to come out here?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't recall if it
and
was
did he
him. Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't know if you were done with your answer or not. You said yes?
Yes, I don't recall if it was him or someone from his office. but
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And what did that person, whoever you spoke to, whether it was Mr. Martinez or someone from his office, what did they tell you?
That they may need me to testify, something to that effect.
Okay. And did they tell you the reason?
No, they said that they may or may not need me.
Okay. And at some point in time on the 28th, you spoke to, well, let me ask you this. How were the travel arrangements made?
Through his office, through Philip, I believe,
Okay.
worked with me on the arrangements.
And you had a plane ticket and you flew out here that same day or the next day?
Same day as what?
Same day as the initial contact, the 27th.
I'm sorry, ask the question again?
You were contacted on the 27th, right?
Yes,
Okay, that would have been the day before you testified, which was yesterday, the 28th.
yes.
Okay. Did you fly out the same day or did you fly out the next morning, the morning you testified?
I flew out I got here Sunday night.
Okay. So Sunday, the 27th, you arrive here. When do you speak to Mr. Martinez?
When I got here,
Well, is that when you spoke to him? Did you speak with him on the phone prior to getting here? I'm asking.
yes, I believe I did. It was him's office. I don't recall.
Okay. Let me be more specific. Did you talk to Mr. Martinez about your testimony, the testimony you were going to give the following day or that same day?
He inquired about Gus and the conversation
Okay.
that we had.
And when did he do that?
We met Sunday night.
Okay. And where was that?
He came to my hotel.
Okay. And the two of you had a conversation?
Yes,
And how long was that conversation?
about 20 minutes.
Okay. And prior to that, tell me about what was discussed during that conversation.
About my phone call with Gus.
Okay. Did he inquire about any text messages or anything you might have sent to Gus?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us what you described to him about the phone call you had. Well, let me ask you this. Let's start with the text message because that's when the contact began, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your testimony here yesterday was that your wife advised you that Gus was on the witness list.
She told me that he was, yes.
Okay. How did she know?
Someone from the prosecution's office called her and asked if she knew Gus Searcy.
Okay. To your knowledge, was that Mr. Martinez or was that someone else from his office?
It was not Mr. Martinez.
Okay. And how do you know this?
My wife told me.
Okay. Had your wife had any contact, to your knowledge, with anyone from the prosecutor's office in the last year?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, what were those contacts?
Just inquiring if she knew a certain person.
Certain one person or several people?
I don't know the conversations that they had, so I'm not sure. She just mentioned that I know that someone had called more than this recent time.
Okay, so there'd been more than one contact between your wife and the county attorney's office, right?
Yeah, over the last 4 years, yes.
Over the last 4 years, okay. How about since trial began? Had someone from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office contacted your wife?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah, I don't know if, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I know about this instance with Gus, yes, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah, but I don't know if it was during trial. I don't know how many more there were during trial,
okay,
if at all.
if at all. So you would, as your wife has not told you about any contact from the county attorney's office? Or speaking with them or speaking with other witnesses since the trial began? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, you just threw witnesses in there, so you need to clarify the question.
Okay, so she spoke to them about witnesses after the trial started. That's what you're telling us, right?
About Gus Searcy, yes.
Okay, and
They inquired about him.
other witnesses?
I don't know.
But they did, over the course of time, inquire of your wife about other witnesses, right?
I don't know about witnesses, but certainly people in relation to this case.
Well,
People that we've known, friends that we've had.
a few moments ago, you said it was witnesses. She consulted with them about witnesses.
I don't know if it was specifically witnesses or not, but she definitely has had conversations with them like she's had conversations with you.
Okay. As it relates to your wife's conversation, do you know if she had any conversations with Mr. Martinez directly?
I don't know that.
Okay. When Gus, you told Gus that you were working with the prosecution, correct?
I don't recall using those words, no.
Okay. That you were watching the trial?
Yes, I did tell him we were watching the trial, correct.
And that you were speaking with the prosecutor about things you saw in trial in case anything was inaccurate, right? That's what you told him.
No, I told him that my wife is very interested in this and that she's watching the trial looking for BS.
Okay. Has she made contact of this supposed BS to the prosecution's office?
You can ask her.
Okay, and we will. Now, there were a couple of things I want to clarify. You said that you haven't spoken to the prosecutor for about 3 years. That was your testimony yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. Does that include other people from the prosecutor's office before you're talking about this travel? Or were there conversations with people from the prosecutor's office, not just Mr. Martinez?
I have not had a conversation with anyone from prosecution up until this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Up until the travel arrangements on the 27th,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. You made a couple other comments yesterday. You made a comment that there were some letters that were proven to be forged or false, right?
Yes.
On what do you base that knowledge?
They weren't admitted into this trial.
Okay. That's how you
Experts have looked at them.
That's how you concluded that. Did someone from the prosecutor's office tell you that?
Tell me what?
That these letters were forgeries or fakes? Is that what
We've
happened?
been following the trial very, very closely.
Did someone from the prosecutor's office speak to your wife about this?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So this conclusion you made that the letters are fake is entirely based on, not on an actual knowledge that they're fake, but just on the idea that they weren't admitted, right?
No, the letters are fake. I know the letters are fake, same way you know the letters are fake.
Mr. Hughes, let me show you. And I suspect, I understand, given the subject matter of these letters, that you would hope that they are fake. I get that. I want to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 4. Why don't you read that to yourself and see if you recognize it?
I do.
Have you read that before?
I have.
And when did you read that?
The day you sent it to my wife.
Okay. And your wife, I'm going to show you this so it's not broadcast here, if I may approach again, Your Honor.
Yes.
Can you look at that email address and see if you recognize that as an email address associated with your wife?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that email that she sent that to me?
Yes.
Okay.
You want both?
Both is fine, thank you. The last document was exhibit 4, the prior was exhibit 9
Thank you.
on the last document. Now, the supposed fakeness, or the forged of these documents that you're asserting here today, and that you claim I know were fake, did anyone advise you before you made these contacts with Mr. Searcy and said these things, that there was actually an expert who took a look at these letters and concluded that this letter that I just showed you, dated January 21st, 2007, Exhibit 4, was in fact, it was highly probable that it was authored by Mr. Alexander. Are you aware of that?
Restate your question.
Were you aware that an expert concluded that this letter, while you're going around telling people it was fake, that an expert concluded that it was highly probable that Mr. Alexander wrote this letter?
No, I'm not aware of that, but I'm aware that you said that it was 100% proven and that you had irrefutable evidence that the letter was authentic.
And you're saying, and we never spoke about it, right?
You told my wife that.
Okay. And these letters, I would say, and you knew Mr. Alexander for quite some time, right?
Since 2001.
Okay. I would think, and you were a close friend with him, right?
Yes,
Knew him very well.
yes,
And the same can be said about your wife, right?
yes.
Okay. When she received these letters, she said, no, that didn't sound like Travis, did she? Is that what she told me? We can read it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
She said, wow, I knew he had issues, but not these.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for your consideration and giving this to us ahead of time. We really appreciate it. Right?
Yes.
She went on to say that we are obviously freaking out. What ages did he prefer?
I'm going
And-
to object to this portion of him reading this. Clearly, those letters have been shown to be forged by the defendant, and the fact of his reading them is inappropriate.
Judge, that's not true.
Counsel approach, please.
in in June of 2010, based on your wife's response, and she shared that letter with you based on what you said before, she shared that letter with you sometime in June of 2010, right?
Which letter?
The letter I showed you earlier?
Yes.
She shared that with you at that point in time, and I'm sure you discussed it, right?
We did.
Okay. And based on the emails I received, it would seem that it was believed to be true, right?
For a few minutes, yes.
Okay. What changed your mind?
Well, first of all, the only reason she believed it is because of what you told her. After analyzing it, looking at it, it didn't add up.
And conversations with the prosecutor, perhaps?
No.
Well, you just said it related to them being inadmissible. That would have happened months later, right?
What are you saying? What?
You said that you knew they were fake because, or you were asserting they were fake because they weren't admitted through a hearing.
That's one reason. The other reason is we looked at it and it didn't make any sense, didn't
Didn't make
add
any
up,
sense.
and it was
Okay.
inconsistent with Travis's behavior.
What was that last sentence, sir?
It was inconsistent. We've seen a lot of his letters, none of them are dated. It just doesn't make any
Okay.
sense. The
So
time
you
frame
did-
doesn't
you
make
did
sense,
your
the
own-
calendar doesn't make sense.
Yes.
The calendar didn't make sense, the date didn't make sense. It was her reconstructing a story.
That was your,
That was my
Personal
assessment,
handwriting.
and that was my wife's assessment,
okay.
the day we got the letter.
Now, you also testified that you believed that the reason we had placed you on the witness list, we being the defense, had placed you on the witness list, was to keep you out of the courtroom, right?
Could you,
Overruled.
could you ask the question again?
You testified yesterday that of your belief, or you asserted that the reason you were on Miss Arias's witness list is because, only because, to keep you out of the courtroom, right?
Yeah, I felt that way,
Okay.
yes.
You felt that way. Yesterday you said it as if it was fact.
Yeah, well,
Well,
it's,
who gave you that information, Mr. Hughes?
what information?
This idea that we put you on the witness list in order to keep you out of the courtroom?
Because when we had a hearing with your client before, we were asked to leave the courtroom. So I just assumed that if we came back to trial, that you would have us excused from the courtroom. So we deduced that from our experience with you in the past.
But there be several other reasons to call you as a witness, wouldn't there?
What are you saying?
In January of 2007, you and your wife engaged in some correspondence with Mr. Alexander where you explained to him that he was being abusive to Jodi Arias, right?
Objection relevance as to that portion, how does that have anything to do with the prosecutor and this witness who haven't spoken in 3 years?
Approach.
Mr. Hughes, I'm going to show you an exhibit that has been marked Exhibit number 5. If you recall, just a few moments ago, I referenced some emails regarding between you and Mr. Alexander about how he treated Ms. Arias, and I'd like to reproach, Your Honor. Could you please read the portion of the email that you wrote to him?
Okay. Am I just reading this first part, or is there more?
No, sir, the entire portion of the email that you responded, I believe it's more than one page.
Okay.
I believe your portion begins on page 3.
Do you have the email that began this conversation? I'm trying to find the context. I don't see it.
Your response on 13107 in its entirety is listed below. Is listed beginning page 3.
No, my question is, where's Travis's email to me that began this conversation?
Sir, I'm asking you about your response.
I'm-
He's going to be attempting to be impeached.
We just had an objection to Mr. Alexander's email being brought in. Now the state is saying they want it brought in.
No, I'm saying he's entitled to read it, which is different.
Well-
Mr. Nuri, do you have the email?
That begins on page 1 of 6 on 1/31/2007.
It's here?
If you look at page 1, it says Chris. That's Mr. Alexander's response to you. Signed Travis. And then your response begins on page 3.
Now, what I'm asking for is, I see here, I start talking to Travis, and I'm obviously talking about something, and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, why don't you go ahead and review the portion that I asked you to review?
I'd like to know the context of this
Why
email.
don't you review the portion I asked you to review?
I can do that. And what was the part you wanted me to review specifically?
You're done reading your portion?
No, I'm not.
Okay, we'll keep going then.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. The subject matter of this email related to how Mr. Alexander was treating Miss Arias, right?
Part of it?
And how it wasn't in a very kind way, right?
I don't recall. I'd really like to read the first part of the letter, what I said to him.
The portion you just read,
Yes.
you expressed to Mr. Alexander, and I know you're trying to wiggle out of it with context, but the ultimate reality is,
And second, he's asking about content. You ordered him not to talk about content.
All right.
no, you asked summation, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not asking specific statements, I'm asking a summary of the substance.
All right, begin again. Mr. Hughes, do not answer the question until the prosecutor has an opportunity to make an objection. Go ahead, Mr. Merriman.
The subject matter of this email, the portion that you read just now, dealt with how Mr. Alexander, in general, wasn't treating Jodi right, correct?
And again, to violate your order, he's trying to get in what the email says. He can be asked, it deals with treatment between the two of them. He doesn't have to characterize it.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection to that specific question. You may answer.
Yes.
You also had conversations with this man here, right? Detective Flores?
Yes.
And during those conversations, do you recall Detective Flores saying, you could see Travis losing it with Jodi and throwing against her a wall, right?
Relevance.
I- Thank you, Your Honor. Let me ask you, Mr. Hughes, what was your reason for contacting Mr. Searcy?
I was curious.
Curious about what?
Curious why he was on the defense list.
And your reason for telling him that I was a quote-unquote snake, why did you tell him that?
I don't recall calling you a snake, but I did say something to that effect.
Okay. And what was your point of doing that?
He was talking about the prosecution. I was talking about the defense.
Were you attempting to dissuade him from cooperating with Ms. Arias?
No,
Were you attempting him to caution him about me?
no. Just
So
expressing my
this-
opinion.
Expressing your opinion. No reason for doing it, right?
No.
That's your testimony? None. Okay. If you were called to testify on Ms. Arias's behalf, would you be happy about that?
No, I would not.
Why not?
Because she murdered my friend in cold blood.
Would you cooperate?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Now, you made the comment during your testimony that Mr. Searcy was a man who liked the attention of the media, right?
Limelight, yes.
Okay. But specifically, you even mentioned the attention of the media, right?
I don't know that I said that.
Okay.
I don't recall.
You gave interviews with the media, right?
One,
Okay. Several hours, right? With CBS?
48 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. To your knowledge, you haven't seen Mr. Searcy interviewed anywhere about this case, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay.
He
That's
was,
all.
he was irrelevant.
Redirect.
Sir, with regard to this case, before you were here in the Phoenix area on Sunday, when was the last time you spoke to the prosecutor, Juan Martinez?
3 years ago.
And were there ever any emails exchanged between you and Mr. Martinez during that 3-year period?
None whatsoever.
You indicated that you would not be happy to testify in this case on behalf of the defendant, but if you were subpoenaed, would you comply with process?
Of course.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you. Do you want these? Sure.
Just leave those right there. Thank you. Counsel?
Your Honor, given the information elicited here, we would be requesting an out-of-state subpoena for Skye Hughes to continue our pursuit of the discussions she had with the county attorney's office and how that affected their disposition towards these proceedings.
Submit the paperwork. I will sign the order. Is there anything else for today?
Well, Judge, I believe we do have Mr. Searcy here to testify in rebuttal, as well as, I believe, if I understand correctly, Mr. Abdullah is appearing telephonically today as well.
Are you ready to do cross-examination of Mr. Abdullah at this time?
I am.
All right, we need to get him on the line. Mr. Abdulhadi,
Yes, miss.
this is Judge Stevens.
Oh, hey, hello?
You are still under oath, do you understand?
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Nurmi, you may proceed with cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Excellent.
Yesterday, when you spoke with Mr. Martinez in court, you testified about going to be interviewed by Mr. Martinez, right?
On the phone or in person? I'm sorry, can you clarify?
Well, let me ask you this. How many conversations did you have with Mr. Martinez?
A few over the last several years.
Okay, and were they all over the phone, or were they all in person? How did that come to pass?
There were, I think, 2 on the phone and then 1 in person in 2011.
Okay. 2011, you said you spoke in person, and was that here in Phoenix?
Yes, sir. I had business in the area, and I made myself available to the prosecutor if he did need to speak to me, and he asked that I come in, and I went in and we talked.
Okay. And do you remember what month this was in 2011, sir?
I believe it was July, mid to end July. I had an event in Phoenix.
Okay. Tell us about the conversation you had with Mr. Martinez, and it was him personally?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us about the conversation you had with him in July of 2011.
Specifically, do you have a question in mind? We were there for about 45 minutes together.
Okay, well, tell us what you discussed in those 45 minutes.
Okay, well, very generally, we talked about what I knew, what I heard, or had spoken to Jodi about. He had a list of, or a list of phone numbers that he was corroborating phone conversations that I had said I had with Jodi, and he was marking the numbers in accordance with the dates that I had thought that we had those conversations to match up to make sure that I was telling the truth. I guess he wanted to see that, you know, there was actually a phone call to her or from her to my phone number kind of a thing. And then just talked about my general feeling about what was going on or what had happened and where I was and what I had thought about it.
Okay. And I take it then this was the only in-person meeting you had with him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you had telephonic conversations with him before, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many of those?
I believe 2.
Okay. And how many subsequent to July of 2011?
You mean after July of 2011?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, maybe 1 or 2.
Okay. So you had 2 before July 2011 and 1 or 2 after, right?
Right.
Okay. In terms of the July 2011 conversation, did you discuss your relationship with Miss Arias?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you remember telling Mr. Martinez about it?
Nothing different than I had said in that interview that you seem to have watched. Point being was that we hung out a little bit and chummed around and got to know each other pretty decently. We had gotten a lunch and we had gotten a dinner. And specifically, I went into some of the details of the dinner, what some of our conversation was. The call that I received from her a couple of days after that dinner, where she had informed me that she was getting back together with her ex-boyfriend, which at that time I thought was the gentleman she had explained to me that she lived with in Palm Springs. It was the first time that I had heard that she had ever gone out with Travis. I did not know that prior. When she explained that to me, that's when I asked her if that's who led her to Mormonism, because that was one of the conversations that we had at dinner, because we walked around and went to a bookstore, and religion came up, and she had said that she was dabbling in Mormonism. So a couple of days later, I thought it was interesting that I knew Travis was a Mormon, so I thought it was interesting that she said that Travis was this person she felt she was cheating on. So then I asked her if that's who led her to the LDS church, and she said, well, no, he showed it to me, but I had made a decision. and that was the, you know, the extent of our engagement in terms of anything social. After that, we'd never seen each other socially again. And as I explained to Mr. Martinez, we kept a pretty decent phone conversation. Maybe every 6 weeks, couple of months, we'd be on the phone together. One would call the other. How you doing? What have you? And that was the only contact I had with her, except for a couple of business events that she was at, that I was at. But we had never seen each other socially after that dinner night.
Okay. Let me ask you, you said the interview that I watched, what interview are you referring to?
The one that you had made mention of when I was on the phone waiting, the headline, or the Dr. Drew show that I had participated in.
I'm sorry, what did you hear?
You made mention of the interview yesterday when you were talking about me before I came on the phone. You brought that up.
A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
If you want to clear this up, it appears from what he's saying that he may have been watching television, so perhaps we may ask him if that was going on. I don't know. I don't know how he knows, but maybe that's what he was doing before he actually testified.
That's exactly what happened. I did not know that I was not allowed to watch television before yesterday morning, but since yesterday and this conversation we're having now, I have not watched television or got on the internet. But before, I was watching television because I was aware that I was going to be called, and I didn't want to get on another phone call or a conference call. And then when the prosecutor made mention that I was going to be called, that's when I turned the TV off and was available to the court.
Okay. Speaking of your testimony yesterday that you gave telephonically, when did Mr. Martinez contact you about testifying?
Sometime last week.
Okay. And what did he say that he was going to ask you to testify about?
Simply that I had given Mr. Searcy his information and vice versa. And as I said specifically yesterday in the testimony, that Mr. Searcy did not get contacted by Mr. Martinez because Mr. Searcy made a point on several occasions to let me know that. And I had explained that to the prosecutor last week when we spoke, and he asked me if that was the person in question. I said, yes, absolutely. And he said that, or asked me if I had had any conversations with him, and I said, yeah, we've only had several over the years, not a bunch, but they were all relating to the fact that Mr. Martinez had not contacted him, and he seemed bothered by that.
Did you watch Mr. Searcy testify yesterday morning?
Yes, I did. As I indicated, I was not aware that I was not supposed to watch any of the trial. So, yeah, yesterday I did watch Mr. Searcy. I watched Mr. Hughes, then got on the phone with you, but then as per the order of, beg your pardon, my other phone, as per the order of the court, I did not watch any testimony today or get online to see what was going on.
So prior to you giving the testimony here yesterday, Mr. Martinez did not advise you as a potential witness not to watch any of the television coverage. Is that correct?
If that was the advice given to me, that's something that I did not hear. And I apologize for that.
Okay. Now these, you mentioned you had two conversations with Mr. Martinez before the meeting in July of 2011.
Yes.
And what were the subject matter of those conversations, and when did they take place?
The first one specifically was September of 2008, and that was myself contacting the prosecutor because this was about 2 months or so after Jodi was arrested. The long story short, at the time, or prior to that, I didn't necessarily feel that I had a whole lot to share. And I had not told this story to anybody save for one person. Nobody even knew that Jodi and I had gone out. Not from me anyway. And so in September 2008, when I saw the Inside Edition, and she claimed that no court would convict her, that's when I became a little concerned, because I had already read the police report online, and so I didn't believe in her innocence, and thought if I didn't contribute something, that maybe this would be a travesty on my part. So I went ahead and contacted the prosecutor's office approximately 2 months after her arrest. And at that point, I went ahead and shared with Mr. Martinez that, him being the expert, I was just going to share my story with him, and if he could use it, awesome. If not, no harm, no foul, but I just wanted to at least talk to somebody about what I had known at the time.
Did you advise him that you had read the police report online when you spoke with him?
Yes.
Okay. And that would have been the first conversation, September 2006. And when was
No,
the
September 2008.
I'm sorry, I misspoke, sir. And then when was the second conversation?
Sometime toward the end of 2009.
Okay.
I believe it was October or November.
All right, and tell me the reason for that telephone conversation.
That was just simply me checking in, because I know there had been some postponements, and just letting him know that if he needed me, and he quickly thanked me, and that was the end of that. And then we didn't speak again till about July of 2011, when I had gone in to the office to actually speak to him.
Right. In July, in any of these conversations up to and including the conversation in July of 2011, had he told you that he was going to call you as a witness?
He gave no indication of that.
Okay. Did he give you any advice as to how to react if anyone on Miss Arias' behalf contacted you?
No, he did not. In fact, I contacted him in the spring of 2012 because one of your investigators called me. And so I called my attorney here in California, because I had never been involved in anything like this before. And it was on my attorney's advice in California that I can talk to you, that I can talk to your investigator, and not talking to your investigator is not breaking a law, but that it would be a good idea if I had a conference call with Mr. Martinez. And at that point, I reached out to Mr. Martinez via text to see if he'd be available. He said he would. I then called back your investigator, I believe this was March or April of last year, and informed him that I would be glad to speak with him on a conference call with Mr. Martinez, and at that point, I did not receive a phone call back.
Okay. So Mr. Martinez wanted to be a part of any phone conversation that Miss Arias, our defense team, had with you, correct?
No, that's not what I said.
You
Can
just,
I restate what I said?
well, you just told us. I don't know.
No, what I said is I reached out to him after I spoke to my attorney. My attorney said it would be a good idea to have a conference call with your investigator, Mr. Martinez. I reached out to Mr. Martinez via text and asked if he was available. He said he was, and that's what happened.
Okay.
I want to make sure we're clear on that. This is a phone call.
I understand what you're saying, sir.
Okay, good, good.
In terms of media, you talked about in your testimony yesterday, if I understood you correctly, you spoke about how Mr. Searcy was someone who wanted the attention of the media, correct?
I speculated that, absolutely, sure.
Okay, you speculated that. Apart from doing an interview on the HLN network with Dr. Drew, what other TV shows did you appear on?
None. In fact, I've been called repeatedly by the usual suspects and have said no to all of them. The only reason I spoke to Dr. Drew is because he's the only one I was comfortable with.
Okay. I have no further questions, John.
I have none, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do we have Mr. Searcy here for redirect?
I believe it is my understanding that we do.
Mr. Searcy, please come on up and have a seat at the stand. You are still under oath, do you understand? Is that yes, sir?
Yes, sir.
Would you hand me those documents, please? Thank you.
Mr. Searcy, when did you first, to best as you can recall, make contact with the county attorney's office?
Probably 2 days after I had first heard that this all happened.
Okay. And did you speak with someone? Did you leave a message? What happened after that phone call?
I got a recording and left a message.
Okay. Did you ever hear back from the county attorney's office?
No.
Okay. When did you make any subsequent attempts to contact the county attorney's office?
I can't precisely, but a few months later, like 2-3 months later, once more information came out about it. Because originally I called because I had one piece of information that could be very useful at that point in time. Then later on, that information was really no longer relevant. But the other piece of information I had was, so I called about that.
Okay. And did you describe the piece of information on these calls?
Neither.
Okay. And then you became aware that Mr. Abduhadi was coming to be interviewed by the county attorney's office, correct?
Yeah, he had contacted me and let me know that he was going to be flown out to Arizona to be interviewed.
Okay. And at that point in time, was there a discussion about, are you advising Mr. Abduhadi what you knew, or and that sort of thing? Just kind of describe that for us.
I didn't cover any real great detail, but I said I had some information they might want to know about, so to let them know, and he said he would talk to them and tell them.
Okay. And subsequent to his interview with the county attorney's office, was it your understanding that he told them about you having this information?
When he came back, he said that he had talked to them and someone would be contacting me.
Okay. And did they ever contact you?
No, a couple weeks later, Abe had contacted me and asked if I'd heard from him, and I said, no, I never heard from your guy. And that was it.
Okay. Without telling me who it was someone present when you had this phone conversation with Chris Hughes that where he asked about your being on Jodi's witness list?
Yes, there was someone in the car with me.
Okay. Is that person afraid to come forward, afraid of Mr. Hughes?
Yes?
Okay. For business, financial reasons, right?
Yes.
Okay. This conversation you had with Mr. Hughes, Is it your impression that he was attempting to dissuade you from cooperating with myself or Jodi Arias?
That's interesting. Because of who it is and the fact that he's very powerful within the company, there's an implied, like, why are you doing this? Because, he doesn't normally call me or talk to me. So the fact that he would call me or talk to me is kind of unusual.
And
We've spoken a few times, but not, any kind of regular basis.
So you believe that there was an implied threat in there?
I can't say it was a threat, but it was, for me, my main thing was, how did he know I was on a list that I didn't even know I was on? Because when I last talked with you, you weren't sure. So I got that, and that's what made me want to talk to him, to find out how he even knew about it.
Okay. And you said he referred to me as a snake and that I was a liar, things of that nature, right?
All that stuff, yes.
Okay. And you would say that those would be things that would attempt to dissuade you to work with us, right?
Yeah, he attempted to shake your credibility with me, yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
May I follow up on that?
You may.
Sir, you indicated that you don't speak or talk to Mr. Hughes very often. Actually, that's not true, is it?
Well, let's get our definitions of what very often is.
Well, you used that, so why don't you give me your definition?
I've spoken to Chris maybe 2 months ago, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, maybe.
Isn't it true that this past weekend on a Saturday, he was scheduled to appear at one of the seminars?
He was holding one of his own seminars for his own business, and we had flyers at our meeting that we were passing out, but I had no conversation with him about that till the day in the car.
And with regard to the conversation about the person in the car, who is it?
Not relevant.
Sir, it's not the way it works.
Objection, Your Honor. It isn't relevant.
Counsel approach. Proceed.
Sir, do you have a pen?
Yes?
Write the name down of the person that's present in the car.
Yes, sir. Do it. I'm going to seal it. It will not be public information.
And if I refuse?
I'm ordering you to do it, sir.
And if I write this number down and it's under seal, what does that mean exactly?
That means it is not public information, but the parties will have access to the information, but it will not be public.
What happens if I decline on the 5th?
We will need to discuss that. Is that what you're asking to do?
If perhaps Mr. Searcy should be appointed counsel.
Do you have an attorney, sir?
Not handy.
Do you have an attorney that you would like to consult with about this issue?
At this time of day, no.
All right, we will adjourn until tomorrow. I will give you an opportunity to discuss this issue with your attorney. You have the ability to hire your own counsel, is that correct?
Well, in lieu of that, since I am supposed to leave town, I would accept whatever you say as what could happen as being credible.
You may. This time I'm going to ask that everyone leave the courtroom. I'm going to have a proceeding outside the presence of the public. Will also not be recorded in any way, other than by the court interpreter, or the court.
Need us some time outside of the jury with the court.
So when would you like to do that?
Well, I believe that our progress has been a little slower, but I think, as I said, I believe that our case will rest on the 11th or 12th, and that any day subsequent to that, and I don't know when the state plans on the rebuttal case, I don't know if they have their witnesses lined up or not. I suspect there would be a couple days of lag time.
No, they're ready. And I'm talking about specifically right now, Janine DeMarte. If there are other people that I need, I'll make sure that they're here.
So, I mean, if the state is ready to proceed right when we rest, then I think a Friday setting would be appropriate. I don't know if the court's calendar can accommodate that or not. Either that, or we do as we were doing with Dr. Geffner and recess early today to continue this misconduct hearing. And Mr. Martinez is telling us that his witnesses, I believe what he's telling us is his witnesses are local, so that should not cause.
No, I said I would be ready to proceed. That doesn't mean that they're local.
Just so I'm clear, Wednesday the 30th, tomorrow, the 31st, do you expect to have witnesses for the entire day?
I suspect, yes, we will on both the 30th and the 31st. I cannot say for certain, but from what Mr. Martinez has just said, is that Mr. Hughes has to be home before Miss Hughes can come out, so I would imagine that that's a viable day to them.
Right.
And next week?
We have witnesses scheduled all throughout the week, most of them out-of-state experts with schedules, so, you know, I would suggest, you know, the 13th, 14th, or 15th as being possible days.
February 8th at 2 o'clock.
That's fine.
A moment, Your Honor. You know, Judge, I just realized, and I said the 13th, 14th, or 15th, we have something scheduled in the afternoon.
Schedule the 13th, 14th, and 15th, and,
No, you said the 8th.
Right.
I said the 13th, 14th, and 15th not available.
oh, you're not available the
Right.
8th.
Right.
Mr. Martinez?
Whatever day is fine.
All right, let's schedule it then for the 13th, which is Wednesday, 1:30.
Fine.
All right, any other issues for today?
No.
Nothing else.